Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Tudor. I hardly know her.
Wow, you really changed your inflection on that, and it threw me off.
Do you want me to try it again?
This
No,
is
no, no.
a recording.
Yeah.
Thank you. Leave your message
Let
after
me give
the
it another
beep.
go.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Tudor. I hardly know her.
Perfect.
Perfect. Absolutely
first try.
wonderful. How you doing, Gare?
I'm doing good. How are you, Emily?
I'm
Oh,
good.
yeah, I'm one of your hosts. My name is Garrett. We have another host. Her name is Emily.
We have a tertiary host. His name is Jeffrey.
Yo.
That's three of us.
And that's the hosts. Also,
And-
apologies if this comes up in the last episode and also in this episode. There's something wrong with the alarm system on our house, and it keeps beeping like every 2-3 seconds.
Hey,
I was hearing
hear
it
that.
a lot when I was editing last time, but there wasn't much else I could really do about it to get rid of it. So,
Hey, Gare.
but it's there.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe somebody broke into your house and they're still there, and your alarm system's trying to let you know that there's a crazy random weirdo living in your attic?
Well, then that means they've been here for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Ooh, Garrett, I can
In
freak
that
you out
case,
so much
they
more.
owe so much money on rent and utilities.
They don't live in New York City. They live in South Bend. Garrett, though, story time. There was a Japanese man who, for like a month, stuff was moving around his house. He lived on his own, and stuff was moving around his house. Things would go missing, and then he'd find them a couple days later. So he set up a security system, and he was reviewing it the next day, and in the middle of the night, a creepy man climbed out of his closet because he'd been living in the crawl space above the closet. And he came out and like ate the man's food and moved his stuff all while he was asleep. True story. Not making
You know-
it up. It's real.
I've actually heard that one before.
Yeah.
I want to know where he was pooping.
There was a poop bucket in the closet. Why do we...
Well, if there's a poop bucket, how can the other guy not smell it?
Maybe he doesn't eat very much. Maybe he's on an all liquid diet.
Oh, no.
Just lots of pee.
My favorite story I heard about something like this similar was
About the poop bucket?
No.
No, someone living in their attic or in their house without them knowing. They found out because one of the guys in the house made a joke. The person in the walls found it so funny he started laughing out loud, and they all just hearing this laughing coming from the walls.
That's how I'd get found out.
Hold on. Hold on. I did read another story about a woman who her husband died, and it was one of those like everything was locked from the inside. How did he die? And the servants, because of course there were servants, got freaked out and left after a little while. And don't remember how, but it turned out that the murderer had broken into the house, and the husband came home, and so the murderer killed him. And he was like, well, I'll just stay here. So he went into the attic for like 3 weeks. So, Gare, check your attic.
All right, and that was a creepy
Corner with Emily.
hidden roommate talk.
I mean, charge him rent at least.
Yeah, so if you're here and you're listening, please contribute.
Check your attic, please.
Yeah, that
that'd
explains
be
where all my cokes have been going.
that'd be so funny if like one day you were like it was quiet in your home and all of a sudden you heard our episode playing and it's just the man who's living in your attic listening to the podcast.
Well, at least he's a fan. Please give us a review. All right, that's enough of that talk. Emily, what are we talking about today?
Well, we've teased it for weeks, and I've decided it's finally time to talk about medicine and illness.
Oh, yes.
Are you so excited?
I'm pretty excited. Let us
I'm actually
go on.
surprised at how much I got out of this.
Before we do get into all that, let's also congratulate our winner from the book contest we just had.
Yes, Rachel. She won a copy of the infamous Lady Rochford. I hope she's liking it. But guys, I actually really enjoyed the contest. I loved seeing everybody's answers. We appreciate everybody who got onto Facebook and contributed. It's so cool hearing more about why you like these historical figures.
It was getting really hard to actually pick. Emily was having a hard time picking, so she had to make
I
me
was
also
way
read
too
through
biased.
and I'll add my own input as well.
Yeah.
And
so
I had no input at all.
you exist in the podcast, Garrett. That's your input.
Right.
But
So
no, they were like
congratulations to
really
Ra-
good. Like some people were really passionate about their answers, and that's
And
what
I
was
loved
really
it.
fun about reading some of them. One, I will say, there was the one I can't. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. The one who said Henry's horse they fell off of.
Oh yeah, they said their favorite character was the horse.
I thought that was actually really clever.
I try also
So,
side note, I try
special note to them.
really hard not to say who your favorite historical character is because these are not characters, these are people that existed. So if I
Historical
slip up, I'm
figures.
sorry. I really don't like saying historical character. I try very, very hard to say historical figure.
I mean, let's be
because-
fair, Emily. Henry was a total character.
He was a caricature. So
So,
Congrats.
congratulations to Rachel. I hope you're enjoying
Yeah.
the book. Everyone else,
I
you will
really-
get the runner-up prizes of Garrett Sings the Hits.
ooh, can you give us a sampling of that?
Oh, is that gonna be more like the choir singing we were gonna talk about before?
Garrett, do a monk
My answers to both
version.
are no and yes.
Garrett, we need to hear a sampling. Could you please sing "Don't Fear the Reaper"?
I'm not going to do it.
Do it,
He's
Garrett.
on the
Come
spot.
I'm not going.
Come on, Garrett.
I'm not your trained monkey, Emily. I'm not going to do that for you.
Dance, monkey, dance.
Also, I want us to keep getting good reviews.
Okay, that's true. We can't have
All
you
of a
sing.
sudden, this turned into a karaoke podcast, and I don't like it.
No, it's karaoke Tudor podcast, so we sing da, 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 da. Green Sleeves, not Harry Potter.
I was about to
Sorry.
say that sounded like Harry Potter.
That
for
did
a
get a
second
little
there.
Harry Potter.
A
Anyway,
little bit.
All right, so
Are
on to
you-
word to illnesses.
Pro tip:
Are
fun
you
fact,
ready?
John Williams wrote the Greensleeves.
he did. He's really old anyway, so
Got an Oscar for it.
unbeknownst- Steven Spielberg hired him.
God, that man's a talent.
Steven Spielberg or John Williams?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, are you
so-
ready?
Illness, wellness, and death.
Yes. So I got a lot of my information from a book that I've used before. It's The Time Traveler's Guide to Elizabethan England, and I'm going to use that information again. Now, Gary, I'm going to let you decide. The chapter in the book, it also talks about hygiene because hygiene is an important part of like staying healthy, right?
Is it?
Kind of. I mean, kind of,
Uh-oh.
sort of. So, I wrote down some wellness stuff or hygiene stuff, but we don't have to talk about that. So you guys can choose.
I feel like it's connected enough. Well, because there's a lot of those mythos of like they only bathed once a year.
Actually, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How about we do this a little differently? What myths do you guys hear about hygiene, illness, and medication in this time period? It's okay if you don't know exactly, but
The two that I know of, the two that I always come back to is that A, nobody brushed their goddamn teeth.
okay.
And two, I just imagine that whenever someone had a wound, they just like rubbed a poultice of like herbs and water on it, and then they were okay.
And then slap some leeches and you're good.
Yeah, leeches too.
I mean, you've got some correct myths and some incorrect myths.
Oh, okay.
Jeff, what were yours?
My biggest one was the bathing one. Like that's always the
Okay.
joke of back then. Like they only bathed once a year anyways.
So you guys actually do. So then you do know a lot about. Sorry. So you do kind of have an idea of hygiene, and that is connected. So let's start with just bathing in general, body hygiene. So we think of bathing. We think of getting clean as using soap and water. Yeah.
Correct.
But there are ways to get clean without soaking yourself in a bath. So back then, and actually since the ancient Roman times until I don't know when, but at least the 15 and 1600s, medical professionals believed that the body was made up of 4 humors. There was yellow bile or choler, CHOLER. That was the first one. Black bile was the second. Phlegm was the third, and blood was the fourth. So in order to maintain a healthy life, you had to keep those balanced. And the bathing thing comes in because they believed that opening your pores to dirty water was the best way to get yourself sick.
Oh, that's kind of very
if
close.
Yeah. So while they didn't bathe as often as we do, that doesn't mean they were dirty. They chose to bathe only if their water was very pure, and they had to assure it was pure, and that was kind of hard to do because water sources in those days weren't as simple as turning on the kitchen sink. So, like they even had bathhouses. Now, to be fair, some of those bathhouses were whorehouses, but they did have real bathhouses.
Yeah, I see. I learned a lot about Roman history when I was in like junior high into high school, and I remember learning about the different bathhouses. Like, in Rome, I mean, they had full like plumbing there. They had bathhouses with heated water and everything.
Yes,
where like groups of people be there to like you would like a gym.
Yeah, so they did bathe. It was just not. They weren't soaking in a tub. They weren't washing. So actually, hygiene as we know it is a very modern thing. And that doesn't mean everybody was dirty. Deodorant was invented in the early 1900s. Toilet paper, it doesn't mean they wiped their butt with their hands. They just used cloths. Your hair.
Use seashells.
Your head. Yes, that's
Banana
exactly
leaves.
what they used.
Wait, what?
Banana leaves, which were apparently ever present in Tudor England, Jeff.
I'm thinking of Jumanji.
Okay. So, oh no, I was going to say something and I forgot it. Baths, whorehouses.
How it's all modern, like deodorant
yeah.
and wiping.
Okay,
and
so actually the human head, you know how your hair gets greasy after if you don't shower for 2 or 3 days?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Your hair is reacting to shampoo stripping it of healthy oils. So your hair is actually healthier and will moderate the amount of oil it produces if you shower less or if you wash your hair less, not necessarily shower. So TMI fact, guys, I colored my hair red, and red hair dye fades fast. So I used to wash my hair either every day or every other day, but I cut it back, and now my hair looks fine most of the week if I only wash it 2 or 3 times a week. Your hair regulates itself.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't going around with greasy, gross hair if you were wealthy. You could still be clean, though. Like, it was a status symbol to be clean. Like, if you were in the if you were working on the field and you had feathers and straw in your hair, they're like, ew. But if you picked those feathers and straws out and, your clothes were clean, they'd be like, you're good. So they did wash. They actually used linen a lot. So linen undershirts, linen cloths, they were very important to hygiene back then. You would actually warm a linen cloth and wash your, quote unquote, wash your hair with it. You just rub it through your hair to get all the dirt and grossness out because it absorbs all that disgustingness. You wore linen undershirts because it absorbed the gross sweat and dirt that you produce throughout the day. And you just get fresh linen every day. So on your bed, undershirts, all that stuff. Now on to teeth. Garrett, they did brush their teeth.
With sugar cane.
Well, I'll be damned.
No. They used linen.
I was going to say, sugar cane was one of those ones I heard. It was one of the other myths I've heard of. I think it was like more like ancient times, way before then. I think they used to think of sugar cane as...
they used to think that they swished their teeth out with urine.
Yeah.
So they brush their teeth with linen?
Yeah, you used a linen
So they
cloth.
use,
So
they
you
use
would
linen for a lot of things, huh?
Yeah, it was a very important product.
I figure cloth and fabric would be a very important thing in multiple
It was especially
areas.
linen. So linen is a certain
linen was
weave.
the duct tape of the times.
The linen was the duct tape of the times. They were like, my boat's falling apart. Where's the linen?
Right?
And then ancient Mythbusters was like, this is true. Oh my God, guys, can you imagine Jamie and Adam?
Oh man, that'd be great.
They're like, we're testing how the bubonic plague gets spread. And they're like, Adam, come here. I've got a flea.
We're gonna use the linen to test if the boat will stay afloat. Still has a beret.
Nice. So linen was used for washing your teeth. Actually, they would use toothpicks. It was usually quills, not the ones they wrote with, obviously, because then it'd be covered in ink. But they would use quills to get grossness out from between their teeth. And they would use cloth, linen, a wet linen cloth to wash their teeth. So
did they use anything like
herbs or anything?
Yeah.
They did for bad breath, which was apparently they really cared about having good breath. The upper echelons
Which
of
is
society.
fascinating.
Yeah, actually, you see in Shakespeare that a lot of insults Shakespeare used in his plays was your breath smells. So good oral hygiene, maybe not oral hygiene as we know it today, but like
I mean,
you didn't want stinky breath. Like literally,
it sounds
they
so
use
way more
rose-
impressive than I would have assumed from
I
them.
know, and like I mean, let's be serious. If you go back into into linen times, hey, I'm gonna. Didn't mean it like that, guys. I'm speaking faster than I'm thinking. If you went back into Tudor times, you're probably not going to have a good time, but your teeth can get clean. Their teeth get black because like you couldn't fill a cavity.
Yes.
Like you're still eating
When something
stuff,
goes
like,
wrong, there's
we
not
had
much you can do to fix it
generally
beyond.
good
Let's just pull that out.
They did pull it out. There were 3 options for teeth pulling.
Ooh.
There was
I'm visualizing them tying a string to a horse and then they just slap the horse.
a blacksmith.
Oh.
If you couldn't afford to go to a barber surgeon, you'd go to the blacksmith and he'd be like, sure. And he'd rip it out with his pliers.
Oh.
And then there was a barber surgeon.
No.
And I can't remember who the third person was. I can look it up in a hot minute. So, teeth were clean. Garrett, what was the other one you said? Oh, the injuries.
Yeah.
I'll get to that in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so back to hygiene. The poor couldn't really afford to stay clean. They did have bathhouses.
Yeah, I figured the whole clean yourself just kind of pinned it on your class.
It was
obviously the wealthy are
yeah.
going to have are going to be able to afford to get access to cleanly water and all this other herbs or ointments they use.
You know how you're watching a movie and it's like, oh, this is the Tudor Times, and they show people dumping poo out a window. People were still grossed out by the sense of crap. Like it's not something we are simply grossed out by. So they didn't try to do that. It was just like in crowded areas, it wasn't easy to get rid of that stuff. But like if you were it's almost like there's a skewed view of the Tudor times or Elizabethan times.
I'm just thinking of My Python's Holy Grail. There's a line where they're like, who's that? I don't know. Must be a king. Why do you say that? You ain't got shit all over him.
So they did care about being gross. Like the people who actually cleaned out latrines changed it from shit house. The people who did clean out the latrines, they would, get in the river and wash all the poo off of them. Like they're not walking. Yeah, they're not literally walking around covered in shit.
God.
Garrett found his calling in the
We've
olden
talked
age.
about excrement so much in this episode. It's becoming Pooter, I hardly know her.
Have you been thinking of that since we made the first poo joke? And you're just like, how can I make a poo pun?
Finally got to use it.
So let me think. Hold on. I think there was one more thing about cleanliness. So they didn't want to immerse themselves in water because it thought they would make themselves sick, but when they had certain issues they would get in water. So they would wash to get rid of pox, scurvy, scabs, piles, and hemorrhoids.
Would they
Yes.
get things to help like I know they probably use anything to scrub themselves or exfoliate?
No, because
Or they didn't think about
exfoliating's a
that.
brand new thing.
Well, I mean, the
linen
same idea. Something
to
that kind of helps scrape
slough
off
the dust.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was just like how hard you rubbed yourself with the linen. Like linen is a tough fabric. I have a linen dress. I'll show you so you can see. It's a tough fabric. So
Yeah.
on certain parts of your body, like your arms and your breasts, you would gently just kind of rub the linen against your skin to
So
get.
almost kind of like a washcloth.
And then, yeah, but no water. And then, I mean, you would wash your hands before and after eating food, and they washed plates. And then, like areas like your thighs, you'd scrub the linen against you to get all the grossness off. So hygiene existed.
I would say I watched a movie. I can't remember exactly what it was. I just remember like there was a moment like this is probably during like
If you tell me a scene, I can tell you what movie it is.
yeah, I just remember seeing someone like they're sort of clean themselves in like a river water, body water, but they're using a stone to kind of rub against their skin to kind of
Yeah,
clean.
I feel like I've seen that before too.
That's
I don't know what you're
Was that a
talking
Mel
about
Gibson
though.
movie?
I don't know.
Either way, yes, they cleaned themselves.
Emily,
Gare?
sorry you cut out for a second. Finish your thought. I had something I want to add.
My thought is done. Add.
Okay. Was being clean and tidy and neat ever tied to religiousness? Because I feel like it would be.
Cleanliness is next to godliness. I don't know.
That's what popped in my head.
I actually don't know. I didn't see anything about it. However, being a part of the church kind of made you part of the upper echelons of society. Is it echelons or echelons?
Echelon.
Is it? Okay, upper echelon.
I heard it earlier. I didn't want to. I figured that'd be the only time you used it in the episode, and no.
Well, I used it once, and now it's appropriate to use it again, but I don't want to say it wrong. I hate it when I use words incorrectly. That's what happens when you read a lot, guys. You learn words, but you don't know how to pronounce them.
All right, Jeff. I want you to take me saying echelon and just cut that in over anytime Emily says it.
Please do. That'd be funny. And then it won't make sense until this part in the podcast. So Garrett,
Unless
if you
we put
think
this part of the podcast at the end of the podcast, so they're gonna hear the whole thing to hear that joke.
Oh man, yeah.
okay, so church
A lot of
and
work for you tonight, buddy.
cleanliness, Garrett. If you think about it, the people in the church were among the higher ups of society, right? So the higher ups in society were the ones who were able to afford to be clean. Like, you needed to have a laundress to wash your linens, or if you were a farmer's wife and you had nothing else to do, which was not true because you were everything to the farmer's wife, to the farmer, then you had to be washing clothes daily for you to have clean linens every day. And it had to be worthwhile to pick dirt out of your hair. But if you're working in a field every day, it's not worth it, right? So
Right.
if you think about it, then the people in the church are less likely to be working in fields. They're more likely to be doing stuff that, like paperwork. And I mean, Thomas Wolsey was Henry's advisor, so they were probably pretty clean. And maybe that phrase comes from that relation, but I'm not. That's just my guessing.
Okay. Another question that popped up, and it's kind of unrelated, but I want to ask.
Yeah.
So, who made clothes? Would like the people in each household be responsible for their own clothes, or
I
would,
remember us
I-
sort of covering this
'cause
during the fashion episode.
We talked about this, and I actually wonder about it all the time. And it's so hard to find an answer because you can't get on Google and say who made clothes or who made fabric, because then it would be like, oh, the Flemish or the English or somebody. Like, I'm curious about who wove the patterns on the amazing material and who made the velvet. I don't know. I do know that like people would weave basic garment clothes from the sheep,
okay.
and they would buy it, and you could buy fabric, but I don't know who actually made the cloth.
Okay.
Like, I wish I did. I wish I had an answer, because that's one thing in history that baffles. Like, Garrett, there's a certain type of fabric, and I can't remember the name of it, but it is intensely detailed, and it was very popular at that time. And it is amazing to think that somebody made that from hand. Even if you had a pattern to guide you on what to do, it was still made by hand. So I don't know. I'm sorry I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
Okay.
If any of you guys listening know,
Let us
write
know.
in and let us know and
Yes.
clear up our ignorance.
Oh, here's a fun fact. They actually had flushing toilets back then. Not everybody.
Oh, thank God. I think I could live there now.
Not everybody. You had to be wealthy.
was supposed to say, toilets really are very low tech
Oh yeah.
stuff. It's just
Didn't
all
they have
simple
them in
suction
Rome?
and everything.
Like I thought in Rome they discovered like flushing toilet. Like they're not that ridiculous. It's really
no.
just having the extra water, which is what makes it expensive.
It's just knowing about the physics of how it works. That's
you
all.
gotta have the water. If you don't have the water, then like
Yes.
And remember, water is not a readily available source for everybody. So a lot of times
Correct.
they would try and build toilets over rivers so that you didn't have a pipe that had to be cleaned out. But they made efforts to be as clean as possible and not have gross things. Okay, so here's on to some links between, being healthy and clean and illnesses. So, bathhouses, that was shut down because everybody got, what's that STD?
Chlamydia.
No, it begins with an S.
Syphilis?
Syphilis. There was a syphilis. Yeah, there was a syphilis outbreak. And Henry shut down some whorehouses / bathhouses.
And it was the saddest day of his life.
And he's like, it's okay. I'll take care of the whores. And he moved him in to his palace. Okay, so the four humors, they thought that they had to be balanced to maintain a healthy life. So if something was wrong with you, it's because unless you were stabbed, one of your illnesses was, or one of your humors was out of balance. So they thought an illness was like a punishment from God, or God simply was like, I'm ready for you to die now. So they also looked at the stars to determine why you were sick. So they thought that had a lot to do with it. And then it was for atoning for transgressions and all that stuff. They also thought the humors could be thrown out of balance through old age, excitement, contagion, eating too little or too much. And they thought that the environment would affect your humors. So, for example, if there was stagnant water around or a dead body, it would give off a funky smell. And so that infected the air, which would then infect your humors. So sometimes they were right, but in very weird crazy ways, like almost accidentally they were right. So there was no difference. There wasn't ever a distinction between mental and physical health ever. So if you were mentally ill, then you were just mental. You were just ill. There is no mental. It is an inside illness. Fun facts: they thought fresh fruit and fresh fish were bad for you. In fact, they thought fish caused leprosy. And if you drink cold liquids after an activity, that was bad. So they were a little bit weird.
Gatorade, not very popular back then.
Don't eat meat on Fridays during Lent. Oh, weird.
So when a person got ill, they would go to a physician, and a physician took care of inside illnesses. So fevers, things like that. Let me make sure. Hold on. I wrote I wrote something else about that.
Well, it's like how we used to talk about how if a woman was sitting there making like medicines or things out of herbs, it was considered witchcraft because she was making
So
spells.
here's
But then
the
men
thing.
did as a physician.
So here's the thing. Women were actually the first resource for illnesses because women were everywhere. Physicians were not. And a lot of women would share their recipes for medication with each other. It would be a communal thing. And in fact, whenever there were plagues around, some women would hire themselves out to go and take care of the plague-ridden people for you made a decent amount of money doing that. So women were the first resource whenever somebody got ill.
How did people take care of people who had the plague without catching the plague themselves?
They didn't, and we're going to talk about that.
Hence why it
Cool.
spread.
Okay,
Bird mask. That's all I always
we're
remember.
also going to talk about that.
Yay.
So a physician was the first person, and I'm sorry, a physician, if you got ill enough that you needed one, they would say, when did you start getting sick? Let me see your pee and let me look at the stars. So you would send them some pee, and they would
That's a
look.
pickup line of mine, by the way.
Can I see your pee? Let's go look at the stars. Ladies, Garrett's available.
Still,
God.
somehow.
After this episode, probably not. Am I right? Just kidding. Oh, man.
I'll date you, Garrett.
Thanks. Wait. Jeff, I'm sorry.
He doesn't need to know.
What?
Shh, don't worry about it, Garrett. I'll take care of it. So, they would look at urine. They would determine they would look at the clarity, the color, and the substance. I'm not sure what the substance means. Like, I know you can get crystals in your urine, but I don't really know what that means besides that. Now, to be fair, urine is actually a very decent test for some illnesses, but mostly about your kidneys and stuff. So, physicians were also very reluctant to get near the patient. So sometimes they would just be like, hey, I heard you were sick. Somebody told me you were sick. So here's a flask. Please fill it with your pee and send it back. Okay. So first it would go to so they would start at home. They'd be like, Mom, I'm sick, just like we all do. I mean, even those of us who are married are like, Mom, I'm sick. Please take care of me.
And if it's my mom, it's no, you're not. Go to school.
You're like, Mom, I'm almost 30. I don't have school anymore.
Go to school, honey.
So it would start at home. And then if, let's say your mom or your sister didn't know what was the appropriate remedy, they would go to the women in the community. And only after that, they would go to a physician. Now, if you started displaying symptoms that were easily identifiable, sometimes you could just go straight to the physician. And then the physician would diagnose and treat the bodily illness. If you had something like a broken limb, a wound, or an ulcer, it would go to a surgeon. And then an apothecary was the one who made the medicines and
Potions
ointments.
and medicines and stuff.
Yeah, they made those.
Yeah.
So during this time, since the printing press had been invented, there were more opportunities for printed books to get out to people. So you would, so sometimes a book would get out and one person would own it, but it would make its way throughout the community and they would copy the recipes for the medication. So sometimes these medicines were actually valid. They were made of herbs that had real healing properties. And then sometimes they were less. Sometimes they made less sense. So let's talk about some of these remedies.
I was going to say, I imagine back in the day, there were a lot of people like, oh, yeah, this totally works. And they're throwing in like nightshade and arsenic and just like everything that's going to kill you.
It gets worse than that.
Worms
poison
work.
ivy
Where's
for a
the
hemorrhoid
worms work?
cream. No.
Okay, so a headache. There was one remedy that actually consisted of some real herbs. I think rosemary and lavender was an option.
I was going to say for headache, you
And
just drink more.
weed.
No. If you had a headache and the rosemary and lavender tincture didn't work, you just held a hangman's rope to your head.
What?
Hangman's rope. You just held it against your forehead.
This will scare the headache away.
All right.
Listen, if you don't go away, you know what's going to happen now.
If you have... I'll threaten you.
I'm going to take us both out, you son of a bitch.
Guys, I'm so excited about some of these. I'm
I
sorry.
hope you're laughing at
there's-
the next one. It's going to be good.
I can't read it. I'm laughing too hard. I've got this ridiculous mental image.
Oh, no.
Okay.
So for rheumatism, you would wear the skin of a donkey.
I'm thinking like the full like head, like the head and the body.
Me too. So I'm just picturing this man walking around town wearing the skin of a donkey.
It's all right.
Sees another
I'm
guy.
just getting better.
Yeah, you
They're
got
like,
rheumatism
Poor Joe. His rheumatism's really acting.
too? For how long, though?
I don't know. I didn't look that specifically.
Or he's just like at home in bed, just wearing this like dressed as a donkey, just sitting there.
Okay, so for baldness, the remedy was to shave the rest of your head and
Problem solved.
and this is a choice, guys. And slather your head in fox grease.
I think you're gonna say fox fur.
No fox.
Like,
Look, I'm a redhead like Henry.
yeah. Heck your baldness. Just shave an animal. Get some more donkey skin. And put it on your head.
And the first toupee was invented. Okay,
This hair's actually made out of linen.
hold on. There's a couple more. For jaundice, this one's disgusting.
Oh man.
Ugh. For jaundice, you drank ale mixed with lice.
What?
Mm-mm.
Like
Why?
the bug?
Like,
lice?
how would you think that would work?
Don't know. Who
were
was
they
the
gonna
first person who did that? Who like picked like? Do you think they were scratching their head over their ale, and lice fell into their cup, and they're like, whatever, and they drank it, and they're like, wow, I'm suddenly no more jaundicey.
Who thought, drinking bugs with booze must really help
I don't
cure?
know.
I just want to see the books that like try to explain why this was a good idea.
I don't think they did the why.
There
I think it was just the how. Okay, so one of the most ridiculous things, even more ridiculous than the donkey. I don't remember.
How?
I didn't read what this was for, but I just wanted to share that one of the remedies called for the powdered skull of a man killed in war. So can you just imagine the apothecary being like, well, I need a man killed in war. And he's like, all right, I'll go dig up Uncle Leroy.
So I'm saying this jokingly, but a part of me believes that it's real, or this is the actual cure. I feel like that would be for impotence.
I need the
Nothing's
remains.
manlier than dying in war.
The remains of a warrior flowing through me.
So those were some of the crazy ones. However, there were some legitimate ones. There was something called colchicum. I think it's pronounced colchicum, and that was used for gout. Let's talk about gout for a second, because gout is arthritis, but it particularly affects the joint of the big toe. And like, that's so specific.
Why does it get its own special term?
Gout, it's actually still a term that's still used, I think.
I know, but it's just
Yeah, you should just call it big toe hurting.
My big toe hurt.
Big toe hurting. Give me the remedy. Put the fox head on it.
So that remedy is actually still used by doctors. Aniseed was used for gastric wind or cough, and that is still used. And then the women would know herbal medicines. So like lavender is a relaxing thing. It's good for coughs and stuff like that. So that stuff is still, some of it was legitimate. It was just like, you're far more likely to get something that contained, no kidding, animal parts or excrement. In fact, 10 to 20% of medicines in those days had either animal parts or excrement in it. That means poo, guys. Dried poo.
recycling.
Ew. Snake skin was also another popular ingredient in medicine.
I think they're just like, whatever sounded cool, let's put it in it.
Kind of, yeah. So plague doctors. So let's move on to the plague. So there were a couple different. So there was the plague, which we all know is the Black Plague, and that's where you
bubonic
get
plague.
the bubonic. And you do get those buboes, which is where it gets the name. Those are those big pustules that are black. You did get those. And there were a couple different times where it kind of rolled its way through England, knocking everybody down. And that one was one Henry feared a lot. And the plague actually killed about 250,000 people in that time. Their supposed solution for that was to burn herbs or leather to kill off the plague, and that didn't work. So here's what they did. So there was a plague doctor, and that's what you're thinking of, Jeff. He wore head to toe. He was covered head to toe, and where are my notes? He was covered head to toe in clothes soaked in vinegar, and he wore that beaked mask.
Yes.
And I believe I was told that those beaked masks, those beak parts, were filled with herbs that are supposed to filter out the bad.
Yeah, it's kind of
like
it's
herbs
kind of
and
like how you
flowers.
see doctors wear the mask
masks,
on their face.
yeah.
It's kind of
So,
similar to that.
Still kind of valid.
Yeah.
And then the boots and gloves. However, when somebody got the plague, their solution was IDK what to do. We'll just lock you all in. So Jeff, let's say you, me, and Garrett are in a house, and one of us gets plague symptoms.
Uh-oh.
One of us, Garrett. Let's
Okay,
say
cool.
Garrett.
Is it me?
Yes. So Garrett has
Oh,
the
no.
plague, and they board up the windows and they lock the doors, and there are people put on guard to keep you from leaving. Garrett dies.
But you guys are still in the house.
Garrett dies, and you and I still have to wait 6 weeks after that to leave the house. 2 weeks later, you get the plague, and then you
course.
die.
Yep.
And I have to wait 6 weeks from there to leave. So there were people who, so the book I was reading told of the story of one man, a woman, 3 children, and their 2 servants were locked into a house. The man, the woman, and their first child died. And then in the 6-week waiting period, no, it was so spread out. It was 8 months before anybody was able to leave the house, and it was just the 2 servants who survived.
Oh man.
Yeah. So now the people who were guarding the houses weren't necessarily like lock and key. It was like, we'll get you medicine, we'll get you food. We'll
Oh sure. I
deliver
figured they were
messages.
still like they try to
They're
help them.
human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't like nope, you're stuck in there. Bye.
But like,
So it you didn't contract it that easily, or you could or you couldn't. It's just all luck.
I was about to say like
they
what's
Or
usually
bad luck.
thought it was.
what's usually the way you contract it? I'm sure touch and things like that, but was it
No.
is it airborne?
Yes, in a way.
And it was rats, wasn't it?
It was the fleas on rats.
Yes.
Oh, the fleas
So-
on rats. Yeah.
Actually, if you're in an area, let's say you time traveled back to England and you get into an area that's got bubonic plague, you GTFO because the rats that are on there, they actually don't move that much. So if you get away from that area, you're likely to be okay because somebody has to get bitten by that flea. And that was common because of the way the mattresses were made. They were stuffed with straw. So fleas and rats would chill in there.
Oh no! Oh
And-
God, I'll never go. I will never time travel back to.
You had that
to
option,
Tudor
but now
times.
you are not doing it. You are willfully not traveling back in time.
You know, I was gonna after this episode, and I'm putting my foot down. I'm not gonna do it.
What
It
when
was
the
transmission through the air.
is it still something relevant today? Like to even
You can get bubonic plague today.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, somebody got it at Yellowstone National Park.
Holy shit! What happened?
They got bubonic plague, and they went to the doctor, and the doctor is like, "That looks like a large black buboes," and he's like, "You have the plague." I don't think they died.
I was gonna say, is there any like real now remedy you can do for it today?
Yeah. There's yes. It's not like the sweating sickness.
The doctor was like, "Go to the closet, nurse, and grab me my plague doctor outfit."
I've been saving this for years.
This was handed down from my
Also,
great.
I've got a masquerade ball to go to, so I'll be keeping that. Thank you very much.
Can you imagine the horror of going to a modern hospital and somebody comes dressed as the plague doctor?
It was a really weird Halloween party we all went to.
Okay, so it's possible that plague is occasionally passed from person to person in the breath. So don't go to gatherings with lots of people. So if you're in a plague town, don't go to the local party. And it can be passed indirectly. So don't borrow their coats.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So hygiene is important to this, but pretty much stay away from rats. Don't go to sleep. You're kind of
I mean-
screwed.
That's pretty sound advice that I already assumed,
It was
but I'm glad you let me know.
It was generally unpredictable, and the deaths were insane. So here is a breakdown. In 1564, the plague killed 200 people in Stratford-upon-Avon. That was 13% of the population. In Norwich, between 1579 and 1580, 4,193 people died of the plague. In Bristol, in 1565, they lost 20% of their population, equating to 2,070 people. In 1602, there was another plague outbreak in Plymouth and Dartmouth, and it killed 2,000 people the following year in Bristol and 1,800 in Norwich. Here's where it gets really bad. In London, in 1563, there were 17,000 plague deaths.
Whew.
That was one of the worst years, except... Okay, in 1578, there were 3,500 deaths. In 1582, there were 3,000 deaths. In 1593, there were 10,600 deaths. And in 1603, there were 32,257 deaths. Those are all from the plague, not just regular dead.
Wow.
And in fact, here's the scary part. So let's go to the two largest numbers. So in 1563... there were 17,404 plague deaths, but that's out of 20,000 total dead. So that means there were only 3,000 people who died that wasn't from the plague. And in
So, and this was in all of England?
London. That was London. That was
just London. Could you imagine being back there? Like, that'd be like us dealing with like some apocalypse scenario or like a zombie apocalypse.
Our
now.
closest thing is the influenza of 1918. We've all learned about that, and we were taught it like everybody got it and everybody died and it was horrible. It was actually like 0.5%, which is still a pretty large amount. But the influenza actually killed a ton of people in England. And hold on. I have a Okay. In the 10-month period between August 1558 to May 1559, influenza caused the death rate to triple from 2.5%, which was the normal death rate, to 7.2%. More than 150,000 people die from it, and that's 5% of the population. So in our influenza pandemic of 1918, we lost 0.5%. They lost 5%. So yeah, that's really weird. That's what we have to think about, is like these numbers are so different. So Elizabeth actually got the flu, and that was pretty bad. No, wait. Elizabeth got smallpox. That was one of the other things you could get. So some of the other issues you would face back then include bloody flux, which was dysentery, and that was transmitted through bad water, bad food, etc.
Traveling on the Oregon Trail.
Yes, if you went on the Oregon Trail, you were probably going to get the dysentery. The dysentery. You also could get the burning egg, which was typhus. You could get typhoid fever, scurvy, rickety cricket. You could get rickets, and tuberculosis, which is what Edward, who the king-napped Edward was one of the king-napped Edwards. That's what we think he had. Elizabeth got smallpox, and she got the best treatment of the day. Do you want to know what the best treatment for smallpox was?
I would like to know.
Jeffrey looks like he wants to guess.
I'm trying to...
You're not.
For some reason, my mind just keeps going to leeches all the time.
Oh, they did do that a lot, but
no, I can't think of anything.
Elizabeth was wrapped in a red cloth.
What?
I just visualizing like a mummy, but just like all red.
All right, everybody, burrito the queen. This will make her well.
So that was smallpox, but then there was also the great pox, which was syphilis. I don't know if they wrapped them in a
not so small, more not so too large. The medium-sized pox.
I have the medium pox, which is a horrible combination of smallpox.
Which
small,
the venti
medium,
pox?
or large or extra large pox?
I'll have the grande pox, please. I'm not feeling it today. Can I get the tall pox?
Can I get a venti pox?
Okay, let's talk about the sweating sickness. So you guys want to hear something terrifying?
Sure.
Doctors still don't know why the sweating sickness happened. It just did. So if it comes back, we're screwed. So the sweating sickness was where you just sweat. There were a series of outbreaks. There was one in 1485, 1508, 1517, 1528, and 1551. It started with a sense of apprehension. So my whole life. You would then get cold shivers, giddiness, a headache, and severe pains in your neck, shoulders, and limbs. That lasted between half an hour and 3 hours. After that, you would get hot and sweaty. There would be heat, headache, delirium, rapid pulse, and an unquenchable thirst. After that, you'd have general exhaustion and you'd collapse, or you'd have an irresistible urge to sleep. Doctors thought if you tried to go to sleep, you'd die. Lots of people died from the sweating sickness. Henry VIII feared it.
I mean, I don't blame him.
No. So the sweating sickness actually came over in 1485, which is the same year Henry Tudor hired a bunch of mercenaries to come and be in part of his army. So there's kind of some thought that he brought it with him. Right. It was like the fearful disease of the day, and even though it didn't outbreak past 1551, it was still a terrifying prospect. Some other common diseases. I talked about the bloody flux. That's what killed Thomas Wolsey, Alan Grant.
Bloody poops.
Bloody poops. There was something called St. Anthony's fire.
No, you're thinking of St. Elmo's fire.
Damn it, you made my joke for me.
Nope, I'm thinking of St. Anthony's fire. So that was actually... Are you done? Okay, so St. Anthony's fire
There's
was
your
actually...
singing for the episode.
It was wonderful. It was actually poison.
It was mostly me just kind of barking at the microphone.
Yeah, we know. We're probably going to cut that out.
No.
Fine.
Maybe. Yeah.
St. Anthony's fire was actually poison that was in grain that was contaminated by a fungus. And you would get anxiety, vertigo, and then a burning or biting sensation. And then sometimes it would lead to gangrene. Yay! Gangrene!
I call it the Kermit effect.
And that's when you get a surgeon in.
The green gang.
The gangrene gang.
Yeah, those guys.
So, okay, let's talk about the people. Let's talk about the surgeons a little bit because they kind of had an easier time of it. They weren't guessing.
They
were like, hey, look.
Cutting things off until you were fine.
Kind of. So they would take care of broken limbs, wounds, ulcers, things that were like open parts of your body. So they would apply poultices to open wounds. So like Henry VIII's ulcers were taken care of by surgeons, not physicians. And they generally did a good job. They were allowed to have, starting in the mid-1500s, they were allowed to have 4 bodies of criminals per year to open and learn. So they got some things right. They did have to amputate a decent amount of time because, gangrene. But they generally did a good job. They didn't... they washed their materials after they used them, but they didn't sterilize them. So blood poisoning was pretty common. But for the most part, I mean, you don't exactly want to go see a surgeon because chances are you broke something or you've been stabbed. So you didn't want to go see them, but they probably had a little bit of a higher success rate than physicians. Okay, let's talk here's another fun fact. If you were mentally ill, you were locked in a room and your head was shaved because they wanted to cool the brain. And then they'd monitor you and then they'd bleed you. So Jeff talking about leeching. I don't know if they used actual leeches, but they definitely bled people because they thought your humors were out of alignment. And blood was one of the humors. So that was pretty much a thing that was done very regularly. Like bleeding was the answer.
His blood's just getting a little too old. Let's let some of it out.
Yeah.
Be fine.
During the Tudor era, though, like medicine became a good thing. Like, not that it was bad before, but the Tudor court was the patron of the Royal College of Physicians. And it probably had everything to do with the fact that Henry VIII feared illness. In 1517 and 1528, during the sweating outbreaks, he actually put himself in isolation. And he would travel he would run away from whatever area was ill. And he'd send people ahead to wherever he was going. And if there were sick people, he'd be like, get out of your house. So people would be dragged out of their house and left to die in the fields because Henry was great.
When was like probably the last case for the sweating sickness?
1551.
So that was the last time we've ever saw it happen.
Yep. And doctors still don't know.
That's fascinating.
Do, 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 do.
Well, it doesn't help that like it hasn't happened since, so there's no one else to really study to find out what it was.
Yet we know how the bubonic plague was moved around. So Henry, let's talk a little bit about Henry and illnesses. Henry self-medicated, which is totally not surprising. He actually had his own book of prescriptions, and sometimes he even concocted his own. He would just create his own medication. In I think the Tower of London, somewhere in England, there is a book, his actual book of his own medications that he took.
Oh, that'd be cool.
So let's talk about a little bit about Henry VIII's health. Tiny little bit. Henry weighed 320 pounds.
Oh.
Yeah. Now you have a number to put to that girth.
Visualizing fat bastard.
Yes. He may have had diabetes, and guys, as a reminder, 320 pounds. He might have had a series of strokes, which would explain a lot of the insanity. He probably had syphilis. Some people have said that like he went mad from the syphilis, but I don't think he went mad from the syphilis. I just think he went mad and had syphilis. He might have had something called Cushing's syndrome, and that's just where you're overweight and a dick.
I'm sorry, what?
Let me double check that. I know it has something to do with being overweight. Wait. No, sorry, it's just being overweight. It has nothing to do with being a dick. Henry VIII was just a dick. I hope I did not offend anybody. You get weight gain around your midsection, fatty deposits around face and upper back, and then you lose fat from your arms and legs. So he might have had that. There is an interesting theory that he had McLeod syndrome, and that is when you're carrying a KEL-positive antigen in your blood, and your spouse is probably not carrying it unless they also have McLeod syndrome. And what happens is if Jeff had McLeod syndrome and I did not, and I'm pregnant with a baby, and the baby has a KEL-positive antigen, during birth, if some of the baby's blood gets in my body, that means that it is going to be very, very, very difficult for me to get pregnant or to carry a birth to term. Remember, Henry VIII's Anne Boleyn had a first healthy child and not a healthy any other child.
That's right.
His Bessie Blount, she had a healthy first child. We don't know if she had any other children. Now, Catherine of Aragon, she did give birth. Her first child, well, no, she had a miscarriage with her first child, and then her second child was healthy. He just died after a month, which didn't have anything to do with her or Henry. Mary was like a fourth or fifth. So it doesn't quite line up, but it's an interesting theory that I think about pretty regularly. But it also leads to mental instability. That's what I was thinking of. Cushing syndrome does not mean mental instability. McLeod syndrome does. So I hope I didn't offend anybody. I'm very, very sorry if I did. Nucleus syndrome leads to mental instability, which Henry VIII was. So, guys, that's it.
That's all we got?
That's all we got. That's all she wrote.
There's a lot. This is a jam-packed episode.
It is a jam-packed episode.
Well, it's especially a time like that where it was harder for them to figure out what was the cause of things or how to actually cure things.
Just
it's
bleed
like
them and don't let them eat fresh fruit.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much of medical science really grew just in the last 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's still things from 100 years ago, they were nowhere near as knowledgeable as they are today about discovery or researching.
So do you want to hear about one of the most ridiculous historical quote-unquote illnesses I've ever heard of?
Yes.
It's where a bunch of people just dance themselves to death. There was a town where they couldn't stop dancing.
So it's like the opposite of Footloose.
It was. It was foot tight. Ugh, that was gross.
So you're talking about the one thing with the doctors, how they'll get criminals' bodies to kind of test on. That made me think of that. It's the story of Burke and Hare.
That's
Burke and Hare.
Where they would
a good one.
sell off the bodies to physicians.
That's a good
They
one.
would dig up graves just to sell them off.
I heard they actually killed people.
I think they started actually doing that later on. That became one of the things later on. Because I think in history only one of them was sentenced to death and the other one was not. I cannot remember the exact one. I've seen a couple renditions of it. There was a recent movie they did that had Andy Serkis and Simon Pegg was in it. They told the story of them.
Guys,
Yes.
the dancing thing I told you about, it was in 1580, so it's 18, so it's super relevant. The outbreak began on July 1518 when a woman, Mrs. Trafia, began to dance fervently in a street in Strasbourg. This lasted somewhere between 4 and 6 days.
Holy shit.
Within a week. Oh my God.
Extreme dance marathon.
Within a week, 34 others had joined, and within a month, there were 400 dancers. Some of these people eventually died from heart attacks, strokes, or exhaustion. One report indicates that for a period, the plague killed around 15 people per day. It is not known why these people danced. Why do you dance? Because I have something worth dancing
I gotta
for.
dance. I just gotta dance.
No, I was just picturing the scene in Harry Potter where Voldemort's like, why do you live? And he's like, because I have something worth living for. Why do you dance? I have something worth dancing for. It's not known why these people danced.
Oh my God.
As the dancing plague worsened, concerned nobles sought the advice of local physicians who ruled out astrological and supernatural causes, instead announcing that the plague was a natural disease caused by hot blood. However, instead of prescribing bleeding, authorities encouraged more dancing, in part by opening 2 guild halls in a grain market and constructing a stage. They did this because they believed that the dancers would recover only if they danced continuously night and day. To increase the effectiveness of the cure, authorities paid for musicians. What is this?
The last known case of this was in the 1970s. It was called the disco era.
Maybe if we let them, they'll disco themselves to death. Modern theories include food poisoning and psychoactive chemicals. Yep, the 70s.
Oh my gosh, that is great.
The same fungus has also been implicated in other major historical anomalies, including the Salem witch trials. Man, can you imagine if the Salem witch trials were the Salem dance trials? Dance Revolution.
The Salem dance-offs.
The American Revolution, it was just dancing, so it was Dance Revolution.
Oh my God, it's the Dance French Revolution.
Boo. Boo.
I love history, guys. I need you guys to know history is amazing. So
that's illnesses.
That's illnesses.
Oh my God.
It was a long time coming, but I'm glad we finally did it.
Me too. I
Yeah.
almost did an episode about Jane, because we did the book giveaway. But I'm very happy I did the illnesses. We'll do Jane next time.
Well, all right.
So we're good. We're done.
Cool. Where can they find us?
Yeah.
I don't know. Where can you find us?
We're everywhere.
Woo, we're probably in your attic.
We're inside the house.
We were inside the house the whole time. This is a live recording for you. I'm going to be so freaked out going to bed tonight. I'll be like, Jeff, can you check our attic?
Good night, Jeff. Good night, Emily. Good night, you two.
It's just Garrett. Garrett's like, yeah, I'm totally in South Bend. No, our
You're letting everyone know where I live. Stop it.
Guys, Garrett's address is boo. This is
Funny, because I don't even know my own address.
That's funny.
If you know the movie Rudy, that's where he lives.
Yes, I live at Notre Dame. You found me.
in the school.
No, the football field where they carried him.
Oh, okay. Our listeners can find us on Facebook at Tudor I Hardly Know Her or on Twitter at Tudor Know Her. So you guys can reach out to us and I'll answer you and we'll chat and it'll be a good time. And I've actually spent many boring days just chatting to people about our fun history stuff. So please feel free to get on either and talk to us because I love everyone who's into the Tudors. So
Tell your friends, rate and review us, all that fun stuff. It helps. Any suggestions? Let us know. But
Hey.
next
If we
time,
said something
Ooh,
wrong, correct us.
guys.
Or if you got any questions or things you want us
or add,
even
like
episode
if you know
ideas.
something other illness facts, let us know because
you guys,
I would love to find out more.
You guys, we're gonna actually. I'm gonna add something more. We're getting close to the anniversary of Anne Boleyn's death. So I'm gonna share a lot of information over the next coming days, and it'll probably be like a couple days before. I mean, like it's a couple days before we release the episode, so some of it might be weird. But for example, today, April 30th in 1536, Cromwell had Mark Smeaton arrested and interrogated for adultery with Queen Anne Boleyn.
Ooh.
So I'll be sharing that kind of information over the next couple days.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's another reason you should follow us so you can see that. And that's it. Garrett's house is still chirping because there's probably still a guy in there. Chirp, chirp.
Please leave me alone.
No. So, guys, until next time.
Until next time.
Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
We were totally not in sync.
That's okay. Jeff and I
It's
are.
gonna be mag.
That's because it's Backstreet